Before I start this Marvel Rivals character tier list, I have a very big disclaimer. Firstly, the most OP S-tier hero in the game is you when you're having fun, so it's best not to get too sweaty and not to take this list too seriously. And secondly, I don't really think anyone knows who will be the most meta in pro play just yet. So instead, this Marvel Rivals tier list has one focus. I'm ranking every hero based on how easy it is to consistently get wins with those heroes at most levels of play. So if you get frustrated with losing too much or want to try and win as many games as possible to rank up in ranked, this tier list is for you. I'll start with B tier because, yeah, there really aren't any heroes that are terrible right now. Namor is first. Yes, his ultimate can do some pretty cool damage, but I think Moon Knight's is better, and his main attack is just a little bit weak compared to most duelists. I know that you can sort of set up his little octopus things to do a bunch of damage from multiple different sources, but once you learn to just destroy traps in this game, the octopuses aren't really much of a threat. It's much better to just have more damage in your actual primary weapon, as opposed to having it spread across these little octopuses. Next up, we've got Iron Man. I know this is a controversial pick. Iron Man can do well, and Iron Man's ultimate is also really strong. Trouble is, it's really hard to do well with him because once you're up in the sky, you are a really easy target. I also think there are just so much better damage dealing abilities in the game, and once you hit Iron Man's ultimate cool, then you know to just run out of line of sight of the skies and you're going to be pretty safe. So it's really easy to learn how to deal with an Iron Man once you've kind of had a few games under your belt. Next up is Storm. Storm, in my opinion, much the same reason for Iron Man, is that she just kind of flies around and gets in the way, but Storm's abilities are even worse than Iron Man's. Iron Man can definitely output more damage, Iron Man's ultimate is better, and Storm is just this weird kind of sort of duelist, sort of strategist, and she doesn't really do either role that well, in my opinion. If I were to put any character in C tier, then maybe it would be Storm, I don't know. The damage for a duelist in her primary attack is not that good. There are so many other higher damage weapons. She only has 12 ammo per round, and she doesn't even get critical hit damage, which is pretty weird. Next up is Squirrel Girl. Now, Squirrel Girl can do some pretty decent damage, but it's all about bouncing nuts around corners, and sometimes they just kind of bounce all over the place, and you don't have much control over where they go. And I think that's one of the biggest issues with Squirrel Girl. If you're right up in someone's face with Squirrel Girl, the nuts can do quite a lot of damage, but as soon as you get like 3 meters away, it does hardly any damage all of a sudden, and then it's really hard to actually hit your shots with, which becomes a bit of a problem. Next, we have Black Widow. Being a sniper sounds like a cool idea. I mean, Widowmaker's really strong in Overwatch, but Black Widow kind of falls flat. Firstly, you can't one-shot with a headshot with a sniper. Secondly, this is a third-person shooter game, so aiming down sights, forcing yourself into first person, puts you at a massive disadvantage. It means you have to stand out in the open to hit shots on enemies, which is kind of goes against the whole point of third-person games in the first place. And there's just a better choice. If you want to play a sniper hero that does high damage per shots, then Hawkeye's better, because Hawkeye can literally one-shot duelists, and Black Widow can't, and I don't really understand why. The time between shots is way too long as well. If you get body shots, then honestly, the damage isn't even that great, and someone like Winter Soldier is far more effective. And Black Widow's abilities don't really seem that cohesive. She's got kind of like a jump thing that can be useful for getting up on height, I suppose. And then a melee, but I mean, you're not really going to be using a melee because you need to keep a distance to get the most out of her abilities anyway. So yeah, there are just better choices for every role that Black Widow could potentially fill. There's no tanks in B tier, but we do have one healer, Rocket Raccoon. Rocket Raccoon is trying to be a sort of healer with a little bit of extra damage on the side, and his ultimate and his gear items are pretty good at sort of doing the support role for you in some ways. And in fact, same with the healing ability that he has. The bouncing spheres will sort of just make their way to allies and heal them eventually, but you have less control on getting more heals out. And because he does have sort of more of a damage dealing primary attack, I feel like the devs were a little bit more careful on giving him too much healing potential, so he doesn't have the most powerful weapon in the game, and he doesn't have the most healing potential in the game. He has some pretty cool movement with a little jetpack dash, but he doesn't actually move that fast. And all of his kit can be destroyed pretty easily, even his ultimate can be destroyed very fast. So if you want to play a damage dealing healer, There are just so much better choices, like Jeff the Shark. Alright, now we're moving on to A tier. So, I was a little bit critical of the B tier heroes, but I still think they can do well. I've seen B tier heroes win games and get MVPs, but now we move on to the heroes that I don't really have too much to be critical about, although I will say that there are just better heroes to fill the roles that they portray. So, these heroes are all great in A tier, but there are some that do the job even better. Starting with Black Panther. Black Panther is actually a really good hero. You throw your spear at an enemy, you dive in, use your melee, and it's really, really powerful. This is a delete ability. You target the strategist, you target the duelist, and you delete them with the right combo. You do need a bit more precision and aim, though, than you would with, say, Iron Fist, and I think that it requires a bit more practice and skill. I do think Black Panther is really, really good, but the fact that a lot of his damage is amplified when he has low health can require a bit more skill, patience, and timing. And I think someone like Iron Fist just does a better job at targeting specific duelists or strategists and then getting out safely. Black Panther is a little bit more high skill for basically the same outcome. Next we have Star-Lord. I think Star-Lord's pretty cool actually. He's pretty decent. His abilities are great. I think Star-Lord's a great beginner hero if you want to just shoot stuff. But the biggest issue is his main gun just isn't quite good as Punisher's, and Punisher gets a shotgun as well, so he's got 2 guns. Star-Lord's ultimate is pretty cool. Star-Lord's movement is pretty fun as well. But ultimately, even Punisher's movement abilities are better. You can get faster movement. With some practice, Punisher can do some pretty cool things, and you can control which direction you want to go. Overall, Star-Lord is pretty good, but if you want to just shoot stuff and get a bunch of kills, Punisher does everything so much better. So keep that in mind. Like, Star-Lord's pretty okay, but Punisher is better. Next up, we have Magik. I kind of feel a bit weird putting Magik so low down. I mean, it's A tier, so it's not really that low down. I've seen some Magik players do some pretty magical things, and Magik has a really awesome combo that can just make you feel like you're super powerful, dashing back and forth, doing melee to keep your health up, and then transforming with the ultimate to do even more damage. Once you're on a killing spree with Magik, you feel like you're unstoppable. But actually, it's not that hard to shut down a Magik. And it requires just a bit more skill to perfect her movement. You have to be in control of the dashes and the directions that they go. In comparison, someone like Iron Fist can just lock onto enemies really easily. Even Spider-Man can lock onto enemies or bring enemies to them. But whilst Magik is a pretty okay melee character, there are better choices that just do the job easier. Next up, we've got Wolverine. Wolverine's kind of a weird hero. I like Wolverine because he's kind of like a tank destroyer. Sometimes there's those tanks that just won't get off your team's back. And your team, all they'll do is just keep focusing this tank, and it's just kind of annoying. Like, you know the tank is doing his job, just trying to distract you from the main focus, which is the duelists and the strategists. But sometimes your team just won't leave the tank alone. And Wolverine's attacks do damage based on the amount of health that opponent has. So Wolverine can just basically target tanks and delete them pretty quickly, which is pretty cool. But his leaps are feeling a little bit clunky at times. They don't always work the way that you want them to. And besides that one sort of tank delete ability, that's it. He has that one combo. You target the tank and then hope that you can take them down. And then besides that, he's not really good at taking out any other players. And if there's someone healing the tank, then you're not going to have any luck. It's so much more effective to play a melee character that assassinates duelists and strategists than it is to try and play Wolverine and clunkily try and get kills on tanks. Yeah, you can use Wolverine to kill strategists and duelists as well, but it's going to be far less convenient to do it with him because the damage he deals to lower health opponents is less because it's based on how much health they have. I honestly think they should rework Wolverine to make him a tank, and maybe that would work out better. But anyway, yeah, he's fun, but a bit clunky, and there are better melee choices. Now we move on to the A tier tanks. Both of these tanks are pretty good, and I don't know, you could rank them higher. I've seen them do well, but once you target these tanks, I feel like they don't quite have as much sustain or escape ability than the other tanks do. The first is Hulk. Hulk is pretty fun. You just throw yourself into the carnage and just Hulk smash everything. You got some pretty good health regen, and your healer can keep you going for longer. And if you do die, then you go back into Bruce Banner and you can, jump away and then wait for the Hulk to recharge again. But the charging time from being Bruce Banner back into Hulk is longer than just dying, respawning, and walking back into the battlefield again. So it seems like a cool thing to be alive for longer, but if you want to be the tank role, temporarily being a worse duelist just doesn't really make much sense. Next up is Magneto. Now, Magneto is a bit of an off-tank. He can deal a decent amount of damage, both short range and long range, which makes him sort of useful for when your duelists aren't really doing too much, and he can choose to tank himself up or give sort of tank abilities to any nearby teams with a shield. But overall, Magneto's just doing all of these different things all at once. He's a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. If you want a good shield barrier, Doctor Strange's are so much better. If you want to actually have good sustain in the middle of battle, then Captain America, Venom, Peni Parker, Groot are just so much better than Magneto is. In fact, I'd even go as far to argue that despite Magneto having a bunch of damage-based abilities, some of the other tanks just do more damage. Groot's really strong, as is Peni Parker and even Thor. Next up, we move on to healers. First, I've got Loki. Now listen, Loki's abilities are pretty cool. I like the way that you can get a bunch of clones down, you can teleport between, and they can provide healing as well. There is a lot of healing abilities for Loki, and his ultimate's pretty fun too. Being able to like take another character's abilities and use their ultimate temporarily is pretty fun. But overall, Loki's actual pure healing output potential is far lower than other healers in this list. If you want to be the best healer, there are better healers. Next up is Adam Warlock. Now, I think being able to revive your team in dangerous situations is pretty good, and Adam Warlock does have quite a lot of damage dealing abilities as well, but it's the same issue where, like, if you want to deal damage dealing abilities, there are better choices. Adam Warlock, despite having damage-based abilities, does less damage than Jeff the Shark, and his healing output is pretty bad in comparison to most other healers. Now we move into A+ tier. These heroes you really can't go wrong with. Honestly, playing these heroes, you're going to have a great time. All of these heroes have a very easy playstyle to follow. Stick with that playstyle and you're going to have a good time. We'll start with DPS. Hela is first. Hela is an amazing DPS because she has hit scan. And her primary attack is really strong. What this means is, as long as you're aiming at a target, you'll definitely hit them. So that makes it really easy to hit targets long range, makes it easier to hit strafing targets, and it makes it easier to hit targets flying through the sky. Spider-Man, Venom, all these targets are so much easier to hit with Hela. Hela's ultimate is also really, really strong as well, and Hela has an ability to escape situations, and it's really hard to track her down when she does that. Next up, we have Spider-Man. I'll be honest, I'm pretty bad at playing Spider-Man, and he's really hard to master. I think most of you players will admit that playing Spider-Man is pretty hard. But once you get the combo down, it's pretty effective to sort of swing around and then sort of auto-target onto enemies with the webs and melee attacks to just combo enemies really quickly. And you know, you're playing that assassin role of targeting supports and DPSs and making sure they get eliminated and then swinging out of the way. Next, we have Punisher. Punisher is, you know, he's the beginner hero that everyone goes for if you just want to shoot things and not think about abilities. But Punisher actually has quite an interesting skill ceiling. Like, you can get really good with Punisher's abilities, and he's not only just a beginner hero. Yes, his assault rifle is really easy to use. Yes, his shotgun is amazing at taking down pretty much every hero in the game when they're up in your face. Punisher's turret is also really annoying to deal with and just kind of slows down pushes. Punisher's ultimate will delete squads, and once again, it's just a better version of Star-Lord's ultimate. And Punisher also has some really cool movement. Next, we have Hawkeye. Hawkeye is an amazing duelist because duelists and strategists that have 250 health can be one-shot by Hawkeye. You will need to charge up the shot and track them for a while to get the max bonus damage and hit a headshot, but that will one-shot people. It's such a high damage attack that's really, really effective and will absolutely eliminate players once you get practice with it. You can even charge up the shot behind cover and track people sort of behind cover as well, which is pretty cheeky. Overall, Hawkeye is the sniper character. If you want to sit from afar and pick off enemies and actually get meaningful results from it, Hawkeye is the one. Next, we have Iron Fist. Yes, Iron Fist, I think, is better than Spider-Man in most cases, but he's still A+ tier. Maybe a little bit higher than Spider-Man, but he's still A+ tier. Iron Fist is basically the hero you choose when you just want to target strategists and duelists and delete them. So the way you do it is you kind of play the flank role, you play on an off angle, you wait for your ability to shift into a target, you hold your block so that you can charge up your melee attack, and then when you go in, it's just an instant wipe. It's an instant wipe. The player will be dead before they even know what happened to them, and then you just quadruple jump out of the way, and then wait for your abilities to recharge and go again. Iron Fist is better at doing this than Spider-Man, but his cooldowns are longer, which means you can't do it quite as often or as effectively as often. While Iron Fist can definitely do it more efficiently, Spider-Man can do it more often, although it takes more skill. So, both are good in their different ways. And then we have Psylocke. Psylocke is also a really good assassin target with some good dashes and also an invisibility ability, so you can get in and out of some dangerous situations and really cause a problem for the backline of your enemy team. The good thing about Psylocke is, while she does have sort of a similar playstyle to Iron Fist and Spider-Man, she actually has ranged attacks, which means it's a little bit easier to do from cheekier angles, and you don't have to quite throw yourself into the action. Psylocke's ultimate is also like a just delete tool. Like you can use it to just completely delete enemies. So yeah, Psylocke's really, really good. Now we move on to the A+ tanks, starting with Peni Parker. I think Peni Parker's tier rating will probably go down in a month or two when people realize that all you have to do is destroy Penny's traps. But for the time being, it's kind of a bit confusing to do so. And for whatever reason, whilst it's easy to spot a trap for like any other character, when you have a bunch of webs all over the place, it kind of like ruins the confidence of enemies. They don't feel as confident to push you. And that's really funny. That's going to change when people understand how Peni Parker works, and then she'll probably be a or B tier hero. And you basically just keep throwing down these traps and webbings and just stay in that webbing area, and you're going to have really persistent health that's really hard to take down. Next, move on to Groot. I think Groot is a massively underrated hero. I'm constantly going up against Groots and having Groots on my team that somehow are the kill leader. They have ridiculous numbers of kills, and it's just ridiculous. His primary attack, for some reason, does a lot of damage. I don't really know why. His melee attack does a lot of damage as well, and his walls are really annoying to deal with. They completely slow down the flow of enemy pushes, and as long as Groot stays by his walls, it has a really nice effect that if your allies attack nearby enemies, Groot will get bonus health from that. So he doesn't always have to rely on his healer keeping his health topped up. Next we have Venom. Venom is the perfect tank for players that don't really know how to play tanks. It's really straightforward. You just throw yourself into the action, put yourself right in the center, spam your attacks because it's just an infinite attack, and then when your health goes a bit too low, you activate your ability to get bonus health, and then when things get a little bit too dangerous, you just swing away and then come back and do it again. You just constantly throw yourself right into the enemy team and cause disruption, make yourself the center of the action, and you be a tank without really realizing what's going on. It's the perfect tank to learn why tank is important, and he does it really well at pretty much all levels of play. Next we have Captain America. Captain America is much the same as Venom, with a little bit more potential when it comes to actually dealing damage. One of the worst things about being a tank is you put yourself in the front line, you put yourself up in harm's way, and then you don't quite have the ability to deal out much damage there. Well, Captain America can do that. His shield is such a strong ability to just put himself right up in harm's way, and it's a really good selfish tank ability. There is better tank abilities. I think Doctor Strange's shield is really, really good and probably better at helping the whole team advance. But when you're just playing yourself and you're playing your own life, Captain's shield is so great at blocking damage. Now we've got the healer heroes in A+ tier, starting with Luna Snow. Once again, I really wanted to put Luna Snow in S tier. I think she's really, really good, but trying to keep S tier reserved for the very, very, very best heroes at the moment. Luna Snow is, in my opinion, the easiest support to play, though, besides Jeff, I guess. But her healing ability does both damage when you hit enemies and heals when you hit allies, and it actually does a decent amount of damage, unlike other healers. So you just click your primary fire at the massive mess that's going on, and you're going to do effective damage to enemies and effective healing to allies. Luna Snow's ultimate is also a really powerful ability, and I'll explain why. It basically means everyone in the radius is going to get a lot of bonus health, and it's just so much more obvious that it's happening than other abilities. And what that means is, when you activate it, it gives all of your nearby teammates a lot more confidence to push with you. So it gives you the ability, when things are a bit too slow and things are kind of coming to a standstill, you pop your ultimate and it finally changes the flow of gameplay, because everyone piles into your ultimate and you can actually push through the objective, and it's really effective at doing that. I think Mantis is also a really good healer, although she's a higher skill healer than Luna Snow. She takes a lot more experience because you have to micromanage a lot more. Firstly, you need to use your damage-based ability and critical hit with it to get the option to use the rest of your healing abilities. Critical hit enemies a lot, in other words, headshots, and you can use your healing abilities more often. And the great thing is it does a lot of damage as well. But then you got separate abilities for healing, empowering your allies, and healing yourself. There are so many different keybinds to get a hang of that it requires a lot more concentration and practice. However, when you get good at it, you can do a lot of damage to enemies and heal all of your teammates for a lot of healing potential. I'm talking massive amounts of heals when you get good at it. Oh, I somehow forgot Scarlet Witch. I keep doing that. I did that in my other video as well. Won't do it this time. Scarlet Witch is an A+ for sure. Scarlet Witch basically just auto-aims on nearby targets, making her really annoying for most levels of play. She also has a really good escape ability that you can use twice, so that's really good at getting away when you almost die. She's really annoying. However, there is one downside to Scarlet Witch, and that's why she's not an S tier. And I think as people get better, her tier will drop down. That's the fact that despite her having auto-aim and essentially 100% accuracy, her damage per second is pretty bad. So when you come up against someone that has good aim, they are always going to beat Scarlet Witch. It's pretty straightforward. Alright, it's time to move on to S tier heroes. These, in my opinion, are the best heroes in the game currently. Maybe not at the highest level of play, but in most levels of play and in most ranked lobbies, these heroes are going to do really well. I want to start with the healers first, because these two healers literally will win you ridiculous numbers of games. Starting first with Jeff the Shark. Jeff the Shark is really strong because he can sit at the back line and heal with infinite range, and when your team is stacked up, the healing will go through and penetrate all of your teammates to heal all of your teammates simultaneously. It feels so satisfying to just fire this sort of like water beam all over the place and suddenly all of your team is healed up. It is so strong at getting a massive amount of team healing all at once, and it has really long ammo use before you have to reload, and the reload is super quick as well. Jeff the Shark's main attack also does massive amounts of damage, which once again has basically no range limit. So you can volley this at enemies from a long distance. And then when you have someone that tries to come and assassinate you, what you do is you throw your E, a little bubble thing at the ground. That will knock them up in the air. You'll get a big amount of health, and then you burrow underground and escape really quickly. It's really hard to assassinate a Jeff. And Jeff can constantly heal himself once he's underground, so he has really good escape potential, really amazing healing, really good damage dealing, and Jeff's ultimate can pick up the entire enemy team and throw them off the edge of the map and instantly wipe them all. All of this together is just absolutely ridiculous. Oh, and Jeff the Shark doesn't take critical headshot damage, which means Hawkeye can't one-shot him, so yeah, he really can't be assassinated. Alright, that's enough about Jeff the Shark, let's move on. Next up is Cloak and Dagger. Cloak and Dagger requires more skill to master, but is effectively one of the best heroes in the game for keeping your team alive during very dangerous situations. Firstly, the healing element of Cloak's ability is really great. It will just automatically target the thing that's nearest to your crosshair. If that's an ally, it will heal them. If it's an enemy, it will damage them. Dagger's version of this will only deal damage, so it's like a more effective damage dealing ability, and it does do quite a lot of damage. Unlike, say, Adam Warlock, which, you know, he does a decent amount of damage but not much healing, Cloak and Dagger can do a lot of damage and a lot of healing. And you don't even have to target. If you miss, it's still going to lock on to whatever's nearby, quite like Scarlet Witch. Cloak herself has a bunch of extra healing abilities as well. But then you change the Dagger and you have a very special ability that is one of the best counters to pretty much any ultimate in the game. Dark Teleportation is literally the best healing ability ever. When you activate it, you and everyone in the radius on your team will be invulnerable for a short time. What this means is you can immediately save your team from Iron Man ultimates, Scarlet Witch ultimates, Jeff the Shark ultimates, and pretty much any other ultimate that will insta-kill you. This thing saves you. So not only are you constantly healing and doing damage on the side, you have an ability that can save your team from insta-death abilities, which is absolutely huge in this game. There are so many super strong ultimates, and this thing basically protects you from them all. Next, we have the first S-tier tank, Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is a really, really good tank that allows you to actually lead the fight. One of the most difficult things about playing this game, especially with randoms, is you can't get them to go where you want to. You can't get them to focus on the objective, and it's really frustrating sometimes. His teleport ability will just basically mean your teammates will follow you. I know there's a bunch of cool clips where Doctor Strange teleports enemies off the edge of the map, and that's kind of funny, but the fact that you could just be like, right, everyone go in my teleport, and then all of your teammates kind of just do it without thinking, because it's kind of like when you see a Doctor Strange teleport to start the match, players just kind of subconsciously go through it. And then you have his massive shield ability. This thing has a really quick cooldown, it will recover health very quickly, and it has a massive 800 shield health, and it's a massive shape as well, protecting you and all of your teammates behind you. So you can charge forwards with this, moving along the objective or holding objective points very effectively, and basically stopping any incoming attacks. So Thor is the next S-tier hero, and I think he's probably the best tank in the game when you understand him better. So when you melee attack with Thor, you will get these Thor Force, which can then be used on your abilities. Using any of your abilities will recharge your health, and all of your abilities have really low cooldowns. So as long as you keep meleeing people, you're going to be able to use your abilities as much as you want to. That will then recharge your health, and you can rinse and repeat, and you basically self-sustain yourself. You don't need a healer to do it for you. And all whilst you're gaining your health back by spamming your abilities, you're also doing a ton of damage to enemies nearby as well. Thor is that hero where you just ability spam like crazy right into the enemy team, and you keep getting health regen, and you keep dealing damage, and you just feel unstoppable. Now we've got the two S-tier DPS heroes. First up is Moon Knight. Moon Knight's basic attack does a bunch of damage already. I think the most important thing for a duelist is to be able to do as much damage as you possibly can without anything kind of slowing you down. And Moon Knight's ability does that perfectly. However, it will also bounce between enemies up to 3 times, dealing damage to other enemies nearby. So you can do massive amounts of damage on the target that you're focusing, bounce the attack onto other nearby enemies, and do a bunch of damage to stacked up teams. Moon Knight also has a bunch of movement to get him out of dangerous situations, and he even has an ability that allows you to bounce your attacks off of that ability. So if you can throw that in, you can basically deal damage from around the corner. Yes, it's very easy to destroy, and that's the biggest counter to Moon Knight right now. But overall, the massive amounts of damage Moon Knight can do to massive stacks of enemies is just ridiculous. And then we have the final S-tier hero, Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier is amazing because his main attack does so much damage that it's such an easy way to delete enemies. And he also has a bunch of abilities to help support him, focus, and target enemies. Unlike all of the other assassin characters that have really sort of fidgety attacks like Psylocke or melee only like Iron Fist and Spider-Man, Winter Soldier has a really fast-firing, almost hit-scan weapon that's really effective to use at most ranges. You then also have a grapple that pulls enemies towards you, a big laser beam that will do damage to targets trying to flee, and a dash forwards that will strike up enemies in the air. All of these abilities will reset the ammo count on the primary weapon as well, which means with some good practice, you can just constantly wreak havoc on the duelists and strategists with Winter Soldier. His main attack is just so strong, and it's a bit more of a forgiving Hawkeye, because you don't have to worry about the charge up time, you don't have to worry about tracking, you just have to hit shots, and you're going to destroy all of the duelists and strategists. The main reason really is because it's just such a strong damage per shot. So there it is, that's my tier list for Marvel Rivals. This tier list is probably going to change as the meta evolves, and it was probably going to change fairly quickly. And I'd love to hear how you'd rank all of the heroes and whether you'd agree or disagree on this ranking. Let me know, and I'll see you in the comments. Cheerio!